The Living City, a city situated within the Jade Kingdom of Theria of the Everspring Swath region of Guran, the Realm of Life. It is one of the very first seeds of hope that were planted during the Age of Sigmar's very beginning, during the Realmgate War's aftermath. This city houses both the citizens of the free cities of Sigmar and Sylvaneth together, who coexist in harmony, protecting this living city. So let's talk a little bit about this free city. And so obviously let's start with the fact it is a free city subfaction, the Living City Army. So this means we get access to all the Cities of Sigmar abilities, such as the empowered endless spells, meaning things like the Emerald Lifeswarm do D6 heals instead of D3, and the Geminins of Ulgish get to activate more mortal wounds, or get to reroll the wounds. In fact, the Purple Sun has more effects, and a whole bunch of the other endless spells like Umbral Spell Portal and the Soulscream Bridge have much increased ranges. This is a fantastic thing, as there's a bunch of great wizards within the Cities of Sigmar that can make a really good use of all these empowered endless spell effects. The next rules we get are the ability to take both a Honoured Retinue and have the Shields rule as well, which means that an Honoured Retinue can be a unit of 5 to 20 models that have a wounds characteristic of 6 or less, and this unit effectively becomes a bodyguard for your general. While your general is within 3 inches of that unit, the general can roll the dice every time they're allocated a wound or mortal wound, and on a 4-up, the unit that is the Honoured Retinue, so long as they're in range, takes the wound instead. Lastly, we also get the General's Adjutant and all the associated rules with them. So General's Adjutant can be another model within your force that has to have a wounds characteristic of 6 or less, and effectively, while that model is within 3 inch of your general, they can generate a command point at the start of turn on a 4+. A cool way to get some extra command points into Cities of Sigmar. But we are, of course, playing Living City this time, and so let's talk a little bit about the particular Living City rules that we're going to get. And so, for me, we're going to start with, well, what I've got here is point 3, and that is the City Wargroves. Living City, as mentioned in the lore blurb before, gets to have Sylvaneth that coexist with the Denzes of the Cities of Sigmar together and in their army. They're in-faction allies, if you will. What this means is they're not allies as normal. They get all the Cities of Sigmar keywords. They can't take any Grove keywords from Sylvaneth. And much like the Stormkeeps that we get from being Cities of Sigmar, these units you can have 1 in 4. So how this works is that you can have 1 in 4 units. So it means you can have 2 Cities of Sigmar units to 1 Stormcast to 1 Sylvaneth. So long as there's 4 units, you can have that layout of them. If there's only 3, then you get neither Sylvaneth nor Stormcast. There must be 4 for you to have either one or the other, or both. What's cool is this gives you access to some cool different units, and some units that really make use of the following abilities, such as Hunter of the Hidden Paths, which effectively allows us to put half our army in ambush that can come on from the table edge and just deep struck onto the battlefield. We then get the Attuned to Nature rule as well. This is a little often forgot one, but you can heal 1 wound allocated to each Living City units at the start of your hero phase every turn. It doesn't sound like a lot, but this means you can get your monsters potentially back up a bracket if your opponent's only just managed to knock them down. And if your opponent doesn't focus on a monster long enough, they can actually start going up a couple of brackets by the end of a game, being much more dangerous in the later turns of the game. The command ability is where the Living City really comes into its own, and it's called Strike and Melt Away. What this is after a friendly Living Cities unit has shot, and is more than 92 away from an enemy unit, is wholly within 18 inch of a friendly Living City hero, that unit can make a normal move, though it cannot run, and the unit cannot benefit from this rule more than once per turn. So this means you can shoot, say, a powerful combat unit and then move them closer with a command point. This is a really cool tactic with Living City. For the command traits in Living City, there's a few good ones around the place, and we've got things like Iron Oak Artisan, which is a particular favourite of mine. It adds +1 to the save, and in addition, add 1 to the wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapon. You've got Forest Strider, where the general can run and still charge in the same turn. In addition, it's not affected by the deadly terrain rule, and you can also make your hero, your general, a wizard. Some cool artifacts that all have a varying bunch of different effects, such as the Spear of the Hunt, which allows you to strike at the start of the hero phase, as well as get some extra rends. You've got the Deepmire Cloak, which helps protect your littler characters, and the Wardrough Horn, which helps buff the Sylvaneth units you're bringing into Living City. Some cool spells in Life Surge, Cage of Thorns that heal and protect and do some mortal wounds back, along with Iron Oak Skin, which can make your units much harder to wound. But let's start looking at how we can start a Living City force. So where do we start with a Living City army? Well, for me, Living City is all about the old worlds of Warhammer Fantasy times. For me, there's no character I think that's a better place to start a Living City army than the Nomad Prince. The Nomad Prince is your forest-dwelling elf hero in the Cities of Sigmar, so he makes a fantastic starting point. Not only that, but he's going to buff a bunch of different units which are included in the Living Cities Battalion, and he himself is also included in the Living Cities Battalion, if you wish to go down that route. Nomad Prince has a cool command ability where he gives +1 to hit to Wanderer units around him, and he's also got a little bird which can go peck out some people's eyes and give them actually some debuffs if it ever manages to hit. It doesn't hit all that often though, but he's a solid character, and in combat he's no slouch. He'll be able to take out most characters of similar stature to him, with that spear being quite decently powerful. To protect him though, we definitely need some bodies, and for me there's no better Living City unit to start with than Eternal Guard. Eternal Guard are by nature wanderers, so they get all the buffs from the Nomad Prince. And what's really cool with the Nomad Prince around the Eternal Guard is the Eternal Guard have a bunch of rules called the Fortress of Bowers and Form Fortress of Bowers. These rules give them +1 to hit, +1 to wound, and +1 save if they don't move. Now, what's cool is that the Nomad Prince, while they won't get +1 to save and +1 to wound, can give them +1 to hit if they start moving around. This can mean late game, if you're really needing to make a charge and just inflict a few extra wounds, the Eternal Guard can go in and do the job. But for me, they are a perfect defensive unit, which sounds really weird for Forest Dwelling Elves being a defensive unit, but these are the units that you can have your opponent break upon. Decently survivable with a 3-up save when they start forming the Fortress of Bowers, as they have a 4-up save base. And then also they can pack out a decent amount of power when they start being like 2s and 3s on their hitting and wounding profiles. Definitely in large blocks with a 2-inch range, these models and these units can actually be rather devastating to the enemy if they break upon them in insufficient numbers. The last box I suggest picking up is a Sisters of the Watch box, and I definitely do suggest you build the Sisters of the Watch rather than the Shadow Warriors, because Shadow Warriors get a rule which really doesn't need to be there when we're using Cities of Sigmar, or rather Living Cities of Sigmar, because we're getting all the rules that Shadow Warriors are getting otherwise, with a few little restrictions. But that besides, Sisters of the Watch have a cool mortal wound output with their bows. They roll a 6 to and they can get an extra mortal wound that can spawn in addition to other damage. That 6 is made on the wound roll. And then they also get extra shots when they haven't moved, and they can stand and shoot as well, meaning not only can these girls be a good offensive unit coming in from deep strike, that they can also be a good defensive unit on your line if need be, standing in front or behind your Eternal Guard just slightly within 3 inch to make sure your opponent can't actually charge them, but is going to have the effects of being shot by them. Now, what's important too with their rule where they get an extra shot if they haven't moved, is that setting up is not moving in Warhammer Age of Sigmar. So by setting up, this unit will always get 2 shots on the turn they set up on the table, meaning coming in from ambush, they'll always have 2 shots, meaning that mortal wound potential does go up significantly. These are the 3 units though that I suggest picking up with Cities of Sigmar, and there are a few options within these kits. Like I said, the Sisters of the Watch are an alternate unit. They do have Shadow Warriors, which are a very different unit and don't have to come along the board side because they have their own personal deep striking rules. And Eternal Guard can also be built as Wild Rangers, which are a vastly much more offensive, monster hunting focused melee units. But let's look at where we can go to next after we've picked up these initial units for our Living City army. For me, there's no place to go better next for Living City than just going straight up and picking up a Sylvaneth unit. And there is no better Sylvaneth unit to make use of all the tricks we can do with Living City than Durthu. Or rather, the Spirit of Durthu. What's good about him is he's an amazing combat hero. Not only that, but he has a shooting attack as well. This means he can take use of the strike and melt away command ability, because he's also a hero, so he can use it on himself to shoot with his weapon, then move forward and charge in with a really easy charge to make. Meaning you can almost guarantee you can get this guy into combat straight away where you want him. His no slouch combat, and with some of the offensive buff command abilities and artifacts in the army, can be a really devastating monster. Next up is Stormcast Eternals, and like Durthu, there's a couple of units in the book that have really good combat potential, but also have shooting attacks, meaning we can make full use of the Strike and Melt Away ability, and those two units in particular are the Dracothian Guard. Any variety will do, though particularly more the combat variations, not so much the Tempestors with the shooting profile, though they'll still do a job with Dracos as their mounts. My favourites personally are Fulminators and Concussors. Concussors are really cool with the ability to not allow your opponent to get a pile in if they manage to roll a 6 on their hit roll to concuss their opponent effectively. But the other unit in question is actually the Drakesworn Templar, who has a bow. Drakesworn Templar is the smaller Star Drake model. It's not the Lord Celestin on the Star Drake, so not the big dragon, but the lesser hero on the Star Drake. And he has a bow, so you can get a Star Drake into combat where you need him straight away, which is not easy for your opponent to remove because Star Drakes are awfully shaky. There's another great unit I would suggest, and another hero option you can potentially take with your Living City, and that is to use a Celestial Hurricanum. Celestial Hurricanums are a fantastic piece for Living Cities, in mainly that they give out shooting buffs. You get +1 hit to all Cities of Sigmar units around them, and in that they have a cool little 12-inch, I believe it's 12-inch anyway, hopefully I'm correct on that, range little mortal wound output where you roll 3 dice, and on a 2-up is D3 mortal wounds. So you can do 3 D3 mortal wounds on 3 2-ups to one unit, potentially removing off some support heroes really easily or doing some serious damage to a monster or a unit. Lastly, we're going to pick another great shooting unit. Now, this is a shooting unit that's just going to drop in and shoot people's socks off, or rather shoot people out of their socks, and that is Iron Drakes. This unit doesn't have any combat potential at all really, but they have a fantastic shooting profile that gets better when they don't move, so once again, setting up is not moving, so they can make full use of those potential abilities which allow them to deep strike and set up in range with their guns and get off at least one turn of shooting untouched by your opponent. These are definitely some great pieces, and there's some other great units you can look at getting Living Cities. Definitely Wildwood Rangers and Wild Riders are decent shouts because they do work in the battalion in the Cities of Sigmar, or rather Living City Cities of Sigmar army. And some other good pieces are obviously other Sylvaneth units that are popular with people. So say things like Dracula, Hammerdreth is another good shout as well. But we're going to go look into a little sample army list I've put together of where we can go with all these pieces and start a Living Cities army. So now let's look at how we can build a Living Cities army. And obviously we're going to be looking at a 1,000-point army because we're going to look at this as a place to go to sort of start playing Warhammer Age of Sigmar. You can also potentially use this in meeting engagement style games if you wish. You just need to obviously make it fit the particular requirements that meeting engagement needs. So obviously going to be playing Living City in Cities of Sigmar. Our leader and our general is going to be a Spirit of Durthu. He's an amazing centerpiece model you can really go to town with and have some fun painting up. But not only that, he's an absolute beat stick of a character in smaller point games and can even do a job in bigger point games later down the line as well. He's going to be our general, as mentioned. He's going to have the command trait Iron Oak Artisan, which is going to give him +1 save and +1 to wound. And then he's going to have the artifact, the Spear of the Hunt. This is going to give him an additional rend, which is going to go on that sword of his, the Sword of Durthu, which you could also convert up to make a really cool Spear of the Hunt if you use some of the Tree Lord Ancient bits alongside his giant sword to make sort of like a spear sword. Big staff spear thing, but it's also going to allow him to strike first if he charges. Now, as mentioned with all the little tricks and tactics we've talked about before, you can do this by using the his little shooting attack, and then use the strike and melt away, moving him forward, his full allotment of movement, as long as he stays outside of 3 of enemy units as per normal. Remembering he can't run, and then make a charge, which he should be able to do quite easily. Our other character is going to be a Nomad Prince. Now, we're taking a Nomad Prince mainly because he's the one I suggested, but he also works well with the Eternal Guard that are going to be our battle line, and this Nomad Prince and our 2 units of 10 Eternal Guard, which are going to be our battle line, are really going to be sort of the home base objective holders of the army, while the rest of it's going out and doing damage, taking opponents' toys off the table. This little base here is going to hold the line. The Eternal Guard, as mentioned, can fill on the Fortress of Bowers, which is going to give them a whole range of benefits, but the Nomad Prince around them means he can give them some additional bonuses to hit as well, meaning they can move around and still get some of those bonuses as well. He's also there just to support them and give them some inspiring presence if they need it to stick around in the fight, making sure we don't lose objectives in our backfield. For our 2 other units, we're going to take a unit of 10 Sisters of the Watch and a unit of 10 Iron Drakes. These are 2 different shooting units, and you could easily go 20 of either one of these, whether in one big blob of 20 or 2 units of 10. But for me, Cities of Sigmar is all about taking variations of units, and I think some cool looking Living City Iron Drakes would be amazing to look at on the table, but you could easily just take 2 units of Sisters of the Watch as well, or 2 units of Iron Drakes if that's what you want to do. For me though, the Sisters of the Watch take out a different sort of target to what the Iron Drakes do. They both sort of slightly differ in the roles they provide to the army. And by having both units, you can sort of decide for yourself which one you like the better. And also it gives you something different to paint up, which is always nice. And the great thing about Cities of Sigmar is just a variety of things you can use to paint up. But this is a cool little army. Definitely it's not going to go winning any top table games. Most of these won't. They're only 1,000 points, so they're not meant to be tournament ready. This is an army based upon just some things to help you get the feel of the army and sort of make your decisions down the line further of where you want to go with a Living Cities list. But let me know what you think of this Living Cities list down in the comments below. Thank you to everyone for watching. If you liked the video, please don't forget to like it. And if you didn't like it, don't forget to dislike it. Let us know either way. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. All your subscriptions mean the world to us. And if you'd like to come chat more with me and other members of our fine community, you can do so by following the link to our Discord server down in the comments below. A special shout out to our Sinful Guard Militia and everyone who supports us on Patreon. Our Sinful Guard Militia members, Christian Weir, Philip Ward, Soren and Kenny Lull, and our Free Good Regiment members, James and AJC. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. It means the world to us. And if you'd like to help support the channel like these fine gentlemen do, you can follow the link down to our Patreon in the description below, which you'll find there. And also you could potentially join our YouTube members as well, where you get some cool little different sort of emoticons to use and badges across YouTube. But that's it for today, everyone. Stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the grey. Ciao for now.